back, everybody. Another edition here of the Auburn Undercover podcast, the Postgame Pod from here inside Neville Arena. Nathan King, joined by Patrick Bingham. Auburn gets another ranked win this season. Their first test, of course, without Janai Broome, who has that ankle injury. We'll see how long he's going to be out. Expected to be a few games, potentially longer. Don't want to speculate too much, but we knew they wouldn't have him tonight against number 15 Mississippi State. Absolutely no problem for this Auburn team. Really, really impressive game. Patrick, 88-66. I thought, from a context perspective, from the fact that Mississippi State has been so good, this team is no slouch, one of the best teams in the SEC so far this season. I think one of Chris Jan's best teams so far in Starkville, really offensively potent. They tie a season low in points with only 66. Auburn plays tremendous defense. Chaney Johnson did a great job stepping into that 4 spot. I thought in terms of an all-around performance, Patrick, no Janai Broome, I thought this was one of Auburn's most impressive games of the season.
Yeah, I mean, we thought Mississippi State's known for their defense. And so we just didn't know, with Janai out, like, how's Auburn going to really kind of reorchestrate this offense? I mean, the guards are great, and we know that, and there's so many good players. But, I mean, Bruce said it in the midweek. He was like, we constructed this team around our best player, which makes sense. And Auburn just goes on a 10-0 run immediately to start. Chad Baker has, I think, 8 of those 10. And it's like, oh, it's going to be one of those games. And then, I mean, Auburn's defense just all night, I mean, the stats were ridiculous. Just completely held Mississippi State down.
Yeah, this Mississippi State offense had, like Patrick said, a team that's known for their defense and their physicality. This is a group that actually started to run a little bit more, a team that liked to get up and down the floor, one of the more efficient offenses in the SEC. But like I mentioned, I mean, tied a season low in scoring, only 66 points. The defensive side of the floor I thought was super impressive for Auburn as well. 2 players that Auburn fans have come to know pretty well. Cam Matthews, a guy they've known for a few years now at Mississippi State. And then Josh Hubbard was one of the best freshmen in the league last year, picked it up. He's been really good in his sophomore season. Those guys combined to shoot 4 of 22 from the floor in this game. They started 0 of 15 combined. Denver Jones played great defense against Hubbard in the backcourt. Then Chaney Johnson, kind of a way to segue into his performance in the starting role, 17 points for him. We knew that was going to be a physical matchup down low. I mean, two guys in the SEC that are just, made of concrete, him and Cam Matthews. I thought the officials did a good job of letting guys play, let them be physical down low. And when Chris Jans came into the media room after the game, he said, look, for the first 20, 25 minutes in particular, and also for most of the game, Auburn was the more physical team. I thought, there deserves, a lot of credit for Chaney Johnson and Dylan Cardwell stepping up, obviously without their All-American big man.
Yeah, I mean, Chaney, he had 4 of the 10 blocks. I mean, it just had a really good performance. I thought what was interesting was, I mean, like, Auburn was clearly the more physical team for the majority of the game, and yet they still didn't win the rebounding battle. That was something that was really emphasized, especially after that South Carolina game where South Carolina ranks really low in the country in offensive rebounds, and they put that number on them. Auburn still lost the rebounding battle, definitely offensive too, and it like almost didn't matter. I mean, now granted, when you make, you have to look at the stats, a bunch of threes, that really helps negate that. But Auburn was still the more physical team despite that, which I thought was cool.
I think you're exactly right, Patrick. I think that when you look at the offensive rebound, 20 offensive rebounds for Mississippi State, that should be a factor when you do that. I think you're exactly right, though, that Auburn's three-point shooting was kind of the nullifying factor here. They shoot 42% from beyond the arc, 10 of 24. They had 3 different players hit multiple triples in this game. Miles Kelly, he made a couple three-point shots, but the rebounding, only the 5th double-double of his entire career. By the way, Justin Hokanson was telling me this after the game, Patrick. The last time Miles Kelly had this many rebounds was also against Mississippi State when he was at Georgia Tech. So just loves getting a bunch of boards against the Bulldogs. But, look, I think it's important for him to kind of roll some good performances together in SEC play. Bruce Pearl mentioned that after the game. And then you talk about Chad Baker-Mazzara. We've seen – how many times have we seen him early in games be the spark plug? Patrick mentioned that 10-0 run. Chris Jans immediately has to call timeout. But Chaney Johnson mentioned it after the game. He said, look, I mean, just – kind of that raw energy. This was the best home game of the season. Bruce Pearl said that Auburn set a record today, the most students in the history of Neville Arena. That's kind of crazy to me, considering some of the games that have been played here. But when we looked around, there were plenty of students in the standing room area. Obviously, the first game back from break. Patrick, it'll be difficult again. 2 road games this week for Auburn. They go on the road at Georgia. But I thought without Broome, I'm not saying they, be okay for them to lose at Georgia. Obviously, they're the better team, and we'll be looking to win that game. But I think just getting off to this kind of start without him and building upon this is so important for this team.
Yeah, and I think a big thing, because we've talked about it all year, like what's the recipe to beat this team, and they were really able to overcome that against South Carolina despite the foul trouble. The big guys didn't get in foul trouble early or really until the very end of the game. So that's something you want to look for. And then it's like when the guards play that well, it's going to be hard for Auburn to lose at any point. I struggle to see them making that many threes on the road, so it's going to be interesting to see once they take it on the road what that's going to look like without Broom. But then, from there, the timetable is interesting because, I would expect Broom's not going to play against Georgia, but then you have the full week before a home game against Tennessee. So there is some time for Auburn to, you're not going to force him back, but not have to play as many games without him.
Sure. He can continue to recover that week. That schedule just kind of plays out that way. Tennessee has a game that week. By the way, they play Mississippi State in their midweek. And so I believe that game is in Knoxville. And so, it just kind of worked out for the schedule. I think every year a team has one full week off before playing again on Saturday. Auburn will have that with Tennessee. They obviously go to Georgia next, but they take care of business tonight. You mentioned it, Patrick, the ability for this team to make shots. Bruce Pearl said at postgame, lots of one-on-one playmaking ability, complimented guys like Denver Jones. Obviously, Tahad Pettiford brings that. Chaney Johnson's really efficient down low. Again, they want to get back to flowing within the offense a little more. 9 assists. You expect a little more from this team. Usually, at the end of the day, they score 88 points.
Yeah,
The one I look at is, they improve in Ken Palm offensive rating without the best player in the country. It's kind of a nutty stat. 88-66, Auburn takes care of Mississippi State. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the Postgame Pod. Nathan King, Patrick Bingham. Head over to auburnundercover.com. We'll talk to y'all soon.